Hi, Matt Stait here again from the Festival of Martial Arts. And today I've got with me Kevin Pell. Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Matt. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much for being part of the festival. And thank you for coming and talking to us today. I know you're super busy. So I always start these the same way, which is can you just give an overview of yourself and what it is that you do?
Yeah, I am primarily a jiu-jitsu instructor, although I have studied other arts. I started, my first art was judo back at the Rolling Mills Judo Club in Enfield in 1966, actually on my birthday, 6th of October, and progressed judo, kyokushin, Shrinji Kempo, Jiu-Jitsu I discovered in 1973, and have been a practitioner of Jiu-Jitsu and Judo pretty much right the way through. I dropped karate and Shrinji Kempo quite early on in the 80s, just so I could just concentrate primarily on my Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's a long time to be training. And
Yeah,
you run your own
55 years.
organization now?
Sorry, Matt, say again.
You run your own organization now?
Yes, mate. Yep, yep. I created the organisation in 1989. I'd been back from a trip to Japan in 87 and pretty much had it fixed in my mind that when I came back from Japan that I would start the first club, and spent a couple of years piecing together the concept that I would utilize in terms of syllabus, identity, logos, et cetera, et cetera. Bearing in mind that this is all in pre-internet and design days. It was felt tip pens and pencils on bits of paper, and talking to friends that were in the graphic design world, a very laborious process. But after a couple of years, we got there. And on the 9th of January 1990, I started the first dojo in Boreham Wood in Hertfordshire. And it's now national, and the rest is history.
Yeah, indeed. Yes. Well, as you say, that's quite a long time ago. So there's a long history behind it. So I'm interested to unpick some of the elements because we got lots of people coming doing all kinds of different things, and it's great to be able to have a look at people's different points of view on things. So
Sure.
um, one of my obvious questions for anybody that's been training for any length of time is how the training has changed, how the way we do things has changed, but more specifically for yourself, because you're very much with the jiu-jitsu, how has the Japanese jiu-jitsu, traditional jiu-jitsu, how has that changed over the years?
That's a good one. I think it's fair to say that I started off incredibly traditional. Being brought up, been very lucky enough to have a fantastic judo teacher who's obviously sadly no longer with us, but he was an absolute Kodokan judo traditionalist. So I was schooled from a very early age in etiquette, Japanese phraseology, terminology, and I think probably when it got to the 80s, with my experiences in the Royal Marine Reserve and in the close protection industry, I altered a lot of our training, to make it very sort of militaristic. I think it's probably a word. I
Okay.
made a decision quite early on that that is the path I wanted to head down. And I'm always saying to the students, I try and uphold the the best of the past, with having one foot firmly placed in the past, but also being prepared to move forward. We have an element of our syllabus which is what I would call classical jiu-jitsu, based on Daitaru, Hakaru, and the old Jukaru system, under the early days of Soki Blundell. But we incorporate things like lots of firearms training, tactical knife work, because we have contracts with UKSF, here and in Europe, and before the trouble in Russia, we was always over in Russia with the Russian military. So the syllabus reflects that. There's a lot of what I would call modern elements: pistol work, gun retention, disarms, knife work, plastic cuffing, baton work, tactical defensive knife work, passive and aggressive search techniques. We deliberately put them in the upper end of the syllabus because it's not everyone's cup of tea. And I think by the time people get probably to green stroke blue belt, they would have decided by then whether this is the right school for them, and then progress into those elements of the syllabus. So it's very much stand up. You know, we have a whole section on knockdown submission. It's very similar to Kyokushin, coupled with the throws, strikes, unarmed combat, sort of self-defense type techniques, which is, you know, more down the jiu-jitsu path, and then leading into the sort of militaristic policing type training further on, highlighting in the 2-day black belt exam much further down the path.
Well, that's a much broader church than people think when they think about sort of traditional jiu-jitsu as a standalone art. So yeah, I mean, things have to move forward, don't they? To remain contemporary, they have to evolve and adapt. Absolutely,
absolutely.
So with yourself then, now obviously you oversee a large organization, so it's interesting for people to see the different levels as well. So you've got you know, a school owner, a single place school owner, or somebody that goes to different venues and things. Now that's a different existence to somebody overseeing an entire organization. So
sure.
what does your day look like?
Right. Okay. Well, we're very lucky to have dare I say it myself, a fantastic location in Norfolk. It was purpose built 24 years ago. We've developed it over time with a full-time Japanese style dojo set within the grounds of the home, with Japanese gardens. We are very open to having charity events here for the Japanese gardens, for British Heart Foundation and Cancer Research. We invite people to open days. We have people come and stay here on a residential basis from across Europe, including the United States and Canada. They come here and stay here at the home, and use the dojo, and we socialize with them and exchange ideas and concepts. So as a headquarters, everything centrally operates from here. I run a class here twice a week at the headquarters, but the rest of the time it actually lays dormant, which is a shame in many ways because it is a beautiful dojo, but I never built it to be commercial. I knew as an 11-year-old that I would build it one day. That's how firm I was of what was going to happen. So I was always going to build it. It wasn't built just to make, you know, for a commercial return. So this has become very much the central headquarters for the UK. So if we do a seminar in duty of care or pediatric first aid or a coaching course, the instructors and senior grades come from the UK to me in Norfolk. All the adult gradings are held here 3 times a year. And on the very rare occasion that a black belt grading happens, bear in mind that I've only produced 5 black belts in 33 years. Wow. They are all held here. Yeah, there's only 5 ever made it to black belt. So that's its purpose as a central HQ. And then everything else happens around the clubs. And the clubs are predominantly in leisure centres across the UK, and a fair amount of private schools that we've had since 1991 throughout the country, where our jiu-jitsu has become part of the curriculum of those private schools. So it's multifaceted, surely. You know, we have the private education system, then we have the leisure clubs and sports centres, and then we have our military clubs. So I'm not sure whether you're aware, but we have a whole military section in Ishlu called the military dojos, where we have clubs on army bases, predominantly Air Force bases, and we have a whole repertoire of military staff. We even had a dojo set up in Afghan when quite a few of our members were out there together as a part of a joint forces medical team, and they even managed to set up an Ishlu dojo in the desert, which we were all very proud of at the time. So that's a very interesting aspect, and we had a really good guy called Paul Rudd, who masterminded all kinds of fantastic charity activities. We raise thousands upon thousands of pounds for Scottish Little Soldiers, Help for Heroes, Hounds for Heroes. So we've done the whole military aspect with everything from pulling Chinook helicopters down runways to military recruitment weekends where the guys were instructed in drill and I believe you're ex-military self, so you know the school.
No, I'm not actually. No,
Oh,
I've
you're
worked
not?
a lot.
Okay.
No, I've worked a lot with military people, and at one point, I was engaged in a private company where I was the only non-military personnel in the entire organization.
Right.
So I can. So
Okay.
people do sometimes make that thing, but yeah, no, I was never actually in the military myself.
Oh, okay, right, yeah. So
Mhm.
that's been a very interesting development, a side of it, and continues to be so. They struggle sometimes at appearing some of the events because obviously military personnel are always moving from base to base and being reallocated, but or relocated. But the good thing is that wherever they end up being, I very shortly get a phone call saying, found the gym, found the local PTI. I'm going to get a dojo set up. So we've always consistently had a military wing to the organisation. So yeah, it's
Mm.
very very diverse. I think it's fair
Absolutely,
to say.
yeah. It's as I say, it's a way broader church than people would first think, myself included. But I
Yeah,
do, I hope you don't mind, but I do have to draw you back to that comment with regards to 5 black belts because it's such an unusual thing these days. You mentioned that you started the organization sort of circa 1990 kind of thing, which is a long time. And when you look at, and again, I'm not asking you to say anything contentious here because we're not
no,
about
no,
that.
no.
We're about coming together, not
Yeah,
not
absolutely. No,
separation.
no.
But with the current sort of situation when it comes to a lot of schools and a lot of black belt churns, you'll sometimes see these videos where there's a room full of 100 people all going for a black belt grading and things. How does I've got to ask 5? Yeah.
Okay. It was a very conscious effort to not go down that path. It was,
Of course.
I think it's fair to say, as a child into young adult, an older adult, that I personally don't like that. I wanted to have black belts that I would be very proud to take here to Russia, to Eastern Europe,
Mm.
in particularly where martial arts have a very hard physical standard, dare I say, and I wanted to come up with something a little bit different. It was never going to be about going into the dojo and doing an hour or 2 hour technical sesh with a few press ups thrown in and walk out the other end as a black belt. The black belt exam itself, I think it's always going to be low numbers because it's based on the Royal Marine endurance course. There's telegraph pole runs, there's a combat swim, there's a 12-mile road run. It's done over 2 days. There's an incredibly hard physical aspect to it. Yeah, it's arduous. I think it's fair
Mm.
to say that the guys that pass their black belt could very easily take part in any military arm, whether it be P Company in the Parachute Regiment or the Royal Marines or whatever, and fit very happily in. In fact, there was a very interesting story a number of years back. We took part in a military charity fundraiser, and it was called the Burgathon, and it involved carrying an incredibly heavy Bergen with an SA-80, an assault rifle. And because of our connection with the military and having military clubs, Ishiru Jiu-Jitsu was the only civilian team allowed to enter. So our senior grades, that was, I think there was some blue belts, browns upwards, got kitted out in a Bergen and an assault rifle and did the run along with a couple of thousand other troops from a whole range of the military. And we came in the top 10%.
Wow. Mm.
And we're carrying kit of some of the soldiers and whatever. So I think it's very much that kind of ethic. For
Mm.
the time you get to Shodan Ho probationary black belt in Ishiru, there is a minimum of a 2-year requirement before you can even put a written application in. I don't allow anyone to put in for a black belt unless they're 21 years of age and above. I don't have any junior black belts. You have to be 21 and above. And you have to realise, along with the support of your family, that this is going to be quite an undertaking. And we hold them back, as I say, for those 2 years minimum period. Most people take 3, sometimes 4 years to prepare. And I say that is a full 2 days, full on
Mm.
martial arts stroke endurance type affair. So for that reason alone, you're never going to have people queuing around the block to take it.
True.
And two of my current black belts, including the lad that started with me when he was 4 years of age, failed it first attempt. Minimum retake time is 2 years to prepare again. And but at the end of the day, it may be very wacky to a lot of people, but I'm incredibly proud of my black belts, and I believe them to be a standard where they're solid.
Yeah. Well, genuinely, well done to those that have passed those 5, because that does sound like a challenge in so many ways.
Very, very much so.
Yeah.
But
so how does that tally up? Because again, my curiosity is piqued. It always is with these sorts of things.
I know what you're going to say.
What do you think I'm going to say?
Are you going to say how the hell do you manage it with 5 black belts?
No, funnily enough, that's not what I'm going to say, although that is another question that could almost certainly pop up. No, my question really is that there's a real vibe from the martial arts community at the moment that if they don't concede lower standards, they're not going to be able to run a successful club. Now, you're a shining beacon to say that's the complete opposite, right?
Yeah.
And so what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, right. Now, that's a very interesting one, Matt, and it's actually going to be subject of another book that I'm doing. Many, many years ago, it's fair to say that I wouldn't say criticised, but I'm sure people had a little bit of a snigger at times, that I concentrated on developing children's clubs alongside a very small adult dojo. And I was always of the belief that eventually, if I was lucky enough to be able to keep on going and have a lengthy career, that I would build the organisation on putting seeds in the ground. So, for instance, Tom Garvin Renchi, who is a third dan with me, he started me as a 4-year-old, as are most of my adults. They were all seedlings, either at private schools or sports centres. I started an adult club when I came back from Japan on that trip, and I was lucky enough to get 7 adults, and that's built steadily over time. But that was never in my mindset as the be all and end all of the future of Ishiro. It was planting seeds everywhere. And where people said, "Oh yeah, Kevin Pell only teaches children," yeah, but I had 2,500 of them. So you drop all these seeds in the ground on a national basis. And guess what? Before you know it, those 4-year-olds become 8-year-olds, become 12-year-olds. Next thing you know, they're knocking on the door as 16-year-olds. They're moving up the system. And I think probably over 50% of all our adults and good adults have been with us since they were tiny children.
Wow.
So they're becoming indoctrinated into the system. So I'm very aware, especially as time goes on, it's very difficult to take adults or find adults, shall we say, that are willing to undergo the kind of training that we do. We have a high dropout rate in adults. Most sort of decide it's not for them quite early on. But the ones that seem to be making it, as I say, are the ones that we've brought up at the time, and through the way we do things, and they seem to be the more successful ones.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that leads to, many other questions around retention and all kind of things like that. All of these sort of words that are incredibly important these days when it comes to marketing and business, which has grown as a focus over the past few years. And again, we've seen the rise of the martial arts business guru recently over the past few years, and you've been in the background banging away at this, building a sizable, substantial organization that's lasted the test of time. And so it's fascinating. We haven't really got time today to go into that more, but my goodness, I would love to pick your brains on that and just chat about it, because it's fascinating. Now, it's my understanding that this is the first podcast that you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
wow.
I said to you on the phone once, I've been on quite a few television programs for Sky and for national television. And I've done radio shows here and in Europe, but I've never done anything, on the podcast. And I've always been slightly terrified by it. I don't know why. You'd have thought being on the television studio would have been the one. But I've watched, quite a few of your podcasts, and more and more of late, and I sort of think, oh God, that must be quite a thing, sort of, being put on the spot and whatever. But no, it greatly interests me. But yeah, you got the first podcast, mate.
Well, thank you for coming on and joining us. And yeah, I do try not to be the whole Jeremy Paxman kind of approach, and
Yeah,
make people feel uncomfortable. Quite the opposite. So that actually now brings us round to the festival itself, because the whole idea of the festival is to sort of celebrate what's great about the martial arts and celebrate those differences, rather than sort of point at other people and try and
sure,
pick fault. So
sure.
the whole idea, the whole ethos is this coming together of like minds, and hopefully
Yeah,
we can all share knowledge and have a fantastic weekend. So very much appreciate you being part of that. And so have you got an idea of what it is you're going to be doing while you're there?
yeah. I would like to, because um, I believe Tommy's going to be there as well, isn't he? The World War II combatants.
Oh, yeah, with Tom, I'm not sure with Tom
Or was
now,
that
because he was.
Kaizen? I don't. I know it was one of the two. I saw his face crop up.
Yeah, Tom was down for coming to the festival. I'm not sure whether his plans have changed recently. I mean, that's
Oh,
a quick.
okay.
I'll have to
Right.
ask Tom. But yeah, he was definitely down to be at the festival, so I'm hoping
Sure.
that's still the case.
Sure. Well, like Tom, I do a lot of military stuff, and I was thinking it might be quite good fun, especially being out in the woods and the fields, and as you say, in the beautiful fresh air. It might be nice to do something a little bit differently, a more sort of a militaristic take on combative knife work, knife defense. Maybe some close protection stuff, some walking formations, maybe in some embussing and debussing drills, and sort of try and do something a little bit different, like a practical application of jiu-jitsu stroke martial arts training.
No, fantastic. Yeah, no, that sounds great, because we've got people like Tommy John Moore coming along, Brett McKenzie coming along, and they're all doing things that are a little bit out of the norm, and so it'd be fantastic to have that as an addition. Now,
Yeah,
yeah, it's such a fantastic event space, and it lends itself to to things that aren't just the same generic stand on
yeah,
a mat, do this kind of thing.
sure, sure.
So that's absolutely great. Now, in the meantime, then, if people want to reach out and contact you, how can they do that?
Okay, we have a website, ishinryu.com. It's ishinryu.com. Or they can email me. We've got quite a strong social media presence nowadays, Facebook and Instagram. My email address is k.pell, that's Papa Echo Lima Lima, at ishinryu.com. If they can email me. And my phone number's all over the place. So there's no great secrets. I'm probably the most contactable person on planet Earth. I don't hide any contact numbers or email addresses. So we speak to people all the time from all over the place. So, and I like to think we're very warm, welcoming people. People are always we're always very happy to entertain people here. If anyone wants to jump in the car and come down for a face to face and a cup of tea and a chat and a look round, always welcome them. As I say, I consider ourselves to be very, very open. And I think that's very important nowadays. There's no, we're not running a ninja school or anything dodgy or strange going on. It's all very transparent.
Yeah, well, to see that again is something that is pushing against the some of the conversations these days. Most of the very big franchises, they are closed book. They are a behind closed doors kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so again, it's one of those. It's fascinating stuff, and and the fact that you're doing all of these things, saying all these things, and they're in complete contrast to a lot of what's being pushed these days is
Sure.
actually really refreshing to hear, and makes me feel better about the world. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
No
It's
problem.
added.
I think it's fair that we love meeting people, and that was my decision. We hadn't been on the circuit for quite a few years prior to COVID, and obviously no one really knew what was going to happen during COVID.
Mm,
And it's only of late, when I spoke to Lucia, I thought, well, do you know what? I'm gonna put my toe back in the water again and get back
mm,
out there, because I felt that the trouble is, when you have a big organisation, it's very easy to become insular,
mm.
because you don't need to operate outside of your own boundaries, because you've got a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
students. But that can be very negative, and there are a lot of good people out there, a lot of good people we haven't yet met, and it's good to meet up with old friends. So I think the way forward for us now personally is very much about, let's get out there and meet these people and get involved.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think if COVID has showed us anything, and that time when everyone was locked down and everything, if it's showed us anything, it's that the importance of connection and the importance of actually having other people in your world, because uh, we missed it when it was gone, didn't we?
Yeah, didn't we just?
Yeah. So on that note, fantastic, and really looking forward to seeing you at the festival. Thank you for coming on board, and yeah, we'll speak then.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Nice to talk to you, and thanks for the invitation.
Oh, my pleasure.